They were the backbone of their teams, the architects of unforgettable moments, the names etched in record books. They dominated, dazzled, and defined eras. Yet when the final buzzer sounded and the confetti rained down, they weren't celebrating, they were watching. No rings, no dynasties, but legacies that transcend trophies. These are the 10 greatest NBA players who never won a championship. Now, just a little disclaimer. Before we get started, we only considered players from the modern NBA, so apologies in advance to all the old heads out there. This isn't a video breaking down how great David Bing or Bernard King were. Finally, this list will not include any currently active players. Otherwise, yes, names like Chris Paul, James Harden, or Russell Westbrook would have to be considered, if not flat out on the list. Let's dive into the list, starting with a guy that gave us highs, heartbreaks, and a highlight tape that is too easily forgotten. He was this close to glory. Then came the whistles, the controversy, and a king who was never crowned. Number 10. Chris Webber.
Johnson with the steal. 4-on-1. Webber! Oh, brother! Right in the face of Jackson, and Jackson went down.
Chris Webber was the prototype for the modern big man. He was 6'10", a special athlete, had elite footwork, and a passing IQ that would make point guards jealous. Today, when you watch big men like Nikola Jokic or Domantas Sabonis dishing dimes from the elbow, remember, C-Webb was a big part of making it popular across the league. Webber started his career with a bang, but his path to stardom in Sacramento wasn't exactly linear. After winning the 1994 Rookie of the Year with the Golden State Warriors, Webber forced his way out of town and ended up playing for Washington, before finally finding his home in Sacramento. And that's where the legend really began. Those early 2000s Sacramento Kings teams were must-see TV. Webber, Peja Stojakovic, Mike Bibby, who preceded the Jason White Chocolate Williams era, Vlade Divac, and Doug Christie was pure basketball poetry. And at the center of it all was Webber, a man with vision of a quarterback and the skills to dominate any matchup. Their peak and the closest Webber ever came to a ring was Game 7 of the 2002 Western Conference Finals against the dominant Lakers dynasty. The Kings might have had the deeper roster, but in a league decided by stars, the equation was simple. One team had C-Webb and Mike Bibby, the other had Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. That 2002 Western Conference Finals lives in infamy among NBA fans and conspiracy theorists alike. Due to the lopsided number of foul calls, specifically in Game 6, it is believed and was later alleged by disgraced ex-NBA official Tim Donaghy that officials working Game 6 fixed the game to ensure a Lakers victory. Alleged game fixing aside, in 2002 the Kings had the best record in the league. They had home court and they could have gone to the finals, but instead the Lakers escaped. The dynasty rolled on and Sacramento hasn't been anywhere near an NBA Finals since. Eventually, injuries caught up with Webber, and a few seasons later the Kings broke apart. As his career arc ended, C-Webb bounced from Philly to Detroit and ended back where it all started in Golden State. But by that stage, he was a limited mid-range jump shooter just trying to help a team. Despite the missing jewelry, C-Webb still left behind a legacy as one of the best power forwards of all time and a player who changed the way we view big men. Much like Webber, the next player is someone who helped redefine their position, and he would be the GOAT if assists could buy NBA titles. Number 9. John Stockton.
Stockton, open three. Good! John Stockton sends the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals.
To the uninitiated, John Stockton looks like your high school math teacher. But get him on the court and he was as deadly a point guard as there's ever been. Stockton racked up more assists and steals than anyone in NBA history and is so far ahead of second place it's laughable. If you're asking, just how far ahead is Stockton really? He finished his career with 15,806 assists and 3,265 steals. That's more than 3,000 assists and 500 steals ahead of Chris Paul, and the way things are going, Stockton's record seems safe for a while. Stockton was the ultimate floor general. He was tough as nails, played all 82 games in 16 of his 19 seasons in Utah, and was always in control. With Karl Malone leading the way, Stockton turned the Jazz into a powerhouse for nearly 2 decades. Stockton ran the pick and roll like a religion from the late 80s through the 90s. He made the Jazz contenders every year. And finally, in 1997 and 1998, Utah broke through to the NBA Finals. Unfortunately, so did the Chicago Bulls. Like Malone, Stockton's ring dreams were bulldozed by Michael Jordan not once, but twice. In 97, they lost in 6. In 98, they had home court advantage, were tied 2-2, and couldn't close. Stockton even hit a huge 3 in Game 6, but that only set up MJ's iconic game winner. After that, the Jazz aged out, the West deepened, and Stockton's window quietly closed. He retired in 2003 after 19 seasons, all with Utah. So why didn't Stockton win a ring? Well, you could blame Michael Jordan's greatness, or maybe it was Stockton's loyalty staying with Utah and never ring-chasing elsewhere as he aged. He just stayed in Utah, kept dishing dimes, and put up a resume matched by only few Hall of Famers. While Stockton is synonymous with loyalty, longevity, and leadership, the next player was a walking highlight reel, and when he got cooking, there was nothing defenders could do but pray for misses. Number 8. Tracy McGrady.
Field goal defense, and that says a lot. Here comes McGrady. Oh, he just sucked the gravity right out of the building. What a play!
If you built a bucket getter in a lab, the result would look a lot like Tracy McGrady. He's 6'8" with lethal handles, a buttery jumper, and the kind of athleticism that made defenders look like they were moving in slow motion. Not as tall, but McGrady was Kevin Durant before Kevin Durant. T-Mac started out in Toronto playing behind his cousin Vince Carter, but once he got to Orlando, he unleashed the full bag. He averaged 26-plus points a game for 8 straight seasons, won 2 scoring titles, and had stretches where he looked like the best player on the planet. T-Mac's 02-03 season is an all-time individual NBA season and should have gotten him higher than 4th on MVP voting that year. T-Mac averaged 32 points, 6 boards, and 5 assists a night, and the beauty of it was how effortless he made it look. Speaking of effortless, that's exactly what McGrady made scoring 13 points in 35 seconds look like.
Popovich obviously upset with Manu.
Here's McGrady for 3. 35 seconds to go.
Of course, for all his individual greatness, T-Mac's teams never made it past the first round of the playoffs. In 2003, his team was up 3-1 in the first round against the Pistons. T-Mac said he was happy to finally get to the second round and, well, Detroit won 3 straight games and sent him packing. His team's failures in the playoffs weren't all T-Mac's fault, whether it be his injuries, underwhelming rosters, or a cursed Rockets run ending with Yao Ming's knees evaporating and forced early retirement. It was just one heartbreak after another. The closest McGrady ever got to the mountaintop was in 2009 with the San Antonio Spurs. And by closest, we mean he was on the roster during their playoff run, but never saw the floor. T-Mac had a Hall of Fame career, but his body and team situation never reached the heights he deserved. The next player on this list was a longevity king, built for the big stage, but was denied the ultimate prize. Number 7. Reggie Miller.
Throws it across, Miller for 3! Oh! He backed it in! He backed it in!
Reggie Miller was clutch before clutch was even pundits' favorite word. He was the NBA's all-time three-point king before Steph Curry rewrote the records. And when the lights got bright, Reggie didn't blink. He thrived. Like Stockton, Miller spent his entire 18-year career with one team, the Indiana Pacers, was a 5-time All-Star, a 25,000-point scorer, and the face of Indiana basketball. But without the ring, what Reggie is best remembered for are moments. Like the time he scored 8 points in 9 seconds against the Knicks, or in '95 when he jawed with Spike Lee, torched the Garden, and then gave the most iconic choke sign in the history of the NBA.
Oh, yes, that man.
Told you guys. You push one hand around his neck, and with the other hand, he grabs his crotch.
Reggie thrived in clutch moments, but when it came to championship rings, they remained just out of reach. The Pacers were this close in 1994 and 1995, running into first the Knicks and then a young Shaq and Penny Hardaway duo in Orlando, but Reggie's real shot came in 2000. Miller was 34, but still as potent as ever when Indiana finally broke through and reached the NBA Finals. Standing in their way this time was prime Shaq and a young, hungry Kobe Bryant. Dream killers for many an early 2000s East Coast finalist. The Lakers won in 6, but after 2000, Reggie never made it back. Reggie not getting a ring is a result of bad timing and an Eastern Conference full of killers. I mean, with players like MJ, Ewing, Shaq, and later in his career, teams like New Jersey and Detroit, the climb was always uphill. Reggie's legacy is set in stone, built on clutch moments and pure showmanship. He lived for the drama, the daggers, and the spotlight. But our next guy? He didn't need theatrics. Just the ball in his hands. With a scoring touch so smooth and effortless, his greatness was often overlooked. Number 6, Carmelo Anthony.
Foul. No. Anthony for 3. Bang! That one goes down and the game is tied.
Carmelo Anthony is one of the greatest pure hoopers of all time. He was a bucket in human form. We're talking mid-range, post-up, fadeaway, off the dribble, at the rim, catch and shoot. I mean, name a shot, Melo had it in the bag. From the moment he stepped on an NBA court, he was a problem. Even before that, he won a national championship as a freshman at Syracuse and basically said thanks for the memories before heading straight to the league. Drafted 3rd overall in 2003, the same draft as LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, Melo instantly gave the Nuggets a swagger. He averaged 21 points per game as a rookie, led Denver to the playoffs in year 1, and over 7 seasons with the Nuggets never missed the postseason once. Despite maintaining consistent contender status, Denver could never break through. The closest they came was 2009, finally reaching the Western Conference Finals. And who was there waiting for them? None other than a highly motivated Kobe Bryant, having lost in the finals the season prior. The Nuggets put up a fight, but the Lakers were on a mission. Melo played great, but Kobe was even greater and sent Denver home. After failing to break through in Denver, Melo took control of his career and forced a blockbuster trade to New York. And for the first half of his Knicks tenure, it was a magical time. He dropped a record 62 points at the Garden, led the league in scoring in 2013, and brought the Knicks their first 50-win season in over a decade. But the playoff success was still limited to mostly early exits. Whether it's a combo of bad timing, bad rosters, or bad front office moves, Melo was never able to make a finals appearance. By the time 2017 rolled around and we entered the Hoodie Melo era, he bounced around from OKC to Houston to Portland and playing his final season in LA with his draft classmate and longtime friend LeBron. His career didn't end the way he would have liked, but his greatness is undeniable. Carmelo retired with more Olympic medals than any U.S. men's player, is a top 10 all-time scorer, and is regarded by his Hall of Fame peers as one of the single toughest players to guard. Speaking of respect, few players command the respect of New York basketball fans more than this next player. Yet, in an almost cruel twist, one of New York's biggest legends also became the face of some major heartbreak. Number 5, Patrick Ewing.
Now has Starks for Ewing. Ewing with the spin. Ewing, yes! 1/8 seconds.
You think of 90s Knicks basketball, you think of Patrick Ewing. His elbow pads, knee braces, and that signature turnaround jumper that made the ball look like it fell out of the sky. Ewing was the rock in the paint. He was an 11-time All-Star, a former number 1 pick, Rookie of the Year, and the defensive anchor of one of the toughest teams in NBA history. This guy didn't just protect the rim, he made it his personal property. His battles were legendary. He had to face Jordan, Reggie, and Hakeem, and every time Ewing showed up like a warrior. but was never the last man standing. Ewing's best chance at a title came in the 1994 NBA Finals. With Jordan retired, New York seized the moment. Ewing led the Knicks to a Game 7 showdown with Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets. But that final game didn't go as planned. The Knicks couldn't buy a bucket. Streak shooter John Starks infamously went 2 for 18, and Ewing, despite a valiant effort, came up just short. By the time the Knicks returned to the finals in '99, Ewing was injured and watching from the sidelines. He later had short, forgettable stints with Seattle and Orlando, but the ring chase was over. Playing in the East during the 90s was tough for any team outside of Chicago, as the Jordan era kept many Hall of Famers from winning titles. Even without the ring, Ewing is one of the game's greatest centers. This next player shares the same alma mater as Ewing, but their playing style couldn't be any more different. At 6 feet tall, all heart, no fear, and the most famous crossover in basketball. The next player on our list is the most influential player of his generation. Number 4, Allen Iverson.
Tracks the double from Carter. 5 to shoot for Iverson. Yes! That was for 3, his 6th.
AI was a 4-time scoring champ, the 2001 MVP, and a cultural icon. Cornrows, tattoos, shooting sleeves, almost everything that's popular in the NBA today can be traced back to him. Iverson's journey started in 1996. In a historic draft class, he was selected number 1 overall by the Sixers and quickly made his presence known. After quickly becoming a star, his best season came in 2001 when he dragged a scrappy defense-first Philly team to the NBA Finals. And by dragged, I mean dragged. Iverson averaged 31 points a game, beat Reggie Miller and Indiana round 1, went toe-to-toe with Vince Carter in the Eastern semis, outlasted Ray Allen in the conference finals, and then faced the Lakers' death machine Shaq and Kobe, who were on a 19-game playoff win streak. In Game 1, Iverson came to prove a point, and he made a statement basketball fans will never forget. He dropped 48 points and of course made NBA meme history before memes even existed, hitting the famous step back and then stepping over Tyronn Lue. Philly took Game 1, and even though it was just one game, it felt like Philly deserved to celebrate a title. Sadly for Iverson, the Lakers won the next 4 games, and that season was his closest brush with a ring. After 2001, Iverson had a few good seasons with Philly, but never another deep postseason run. Once he left Philly, he had some moments with Denver, but then it was unforgettable stops in Detroit and Memphis before his career came to a sudden end, with nothing coming close to that 2001 magic again. Some may argue Iverson's place is too high on this list, but what Iverson has over every player listed so far is a league MVP. AI didn't just win the MVP, he won it over both Duncan and Shaq. That's something Iverson and the next player on our list have in common. Only the next player did it twice. Number 3, Steve Nash.
6-point game. Suns still alive. Oh! Play.
How do you do this right here? Big coming over. Modmanovic's body couldn't even...
Steve Nash is one of the few point guards in history to truly change the game. When Nash had the ball, he controlled everything on the court, including the opposing defense. Nash was a maestro of the game, one of the greatest shooters ever, and during a time where Kobe, Shaq, LeBron, Duncan, and Dirk Nowitzki were all at the top of the league, Nash won 2 straight MVP awards. The Canadian kid came into the league in '96 with the Suns, but barely played as a rookie. It wasn't until he was traded to Dallas and teamed up with Dirk that Nash showed signs of brilliance. Just when it looked like a Nash-Dirk duo would run wild in the West, Nash ended up back in Phoenix. And in 2004, Nash proved to everyone he was perfectly capable of carrying his own team. Simply put, Nash unlocked basketball. He was dropping 11 assists a night, splitting double teams like a magician, and leading one of the most entertaining teams the league had ever seen. Nash and Amari pick and rolls were the newer and more exciting Stockton to Malone, and 7 seconds or less basketball was like watching NBA 2K come to life. Despite the back-to-back MVPs in 05 and 06, Nash never made the finals. And you might ask how? Well, one name: the San Antonio Spurs. And if we're being more specific, Tim Duncan. Let's talk about the suspensions in the 2007 Western Conference Finals. During a heated Game 4, Robert Horry hip-checks Nash into the scorer's table. Amari and Boris Diaw take one innocent step off the bench during the chaos, and boom, automatic suspensions handed out. That was Phoenix's best shot at winning, but without two of their three most important players in Game 5, the Spurs took control of the series and went on to win the title that year. In the following seasons with the Suns, Nash continued his pursuits of a ring, even reaching the conference finals again in 2010. His final push was with Kobe and the Lakers in 2012, but by then, Nash's back was toast and their team chemistry was a disaster. So, no ring. But what Nash did do was set a prototype for the ideal point guard moving forward. And even without a title, he left the game more beautiful than he found it. Nash is a beloved figure in the desert, but even he stands in line behind the next guy on our list, if we're talking most beloved Suns players ever. Number 2, Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley wasn't built like your typical NBA star. He was 6'6" on a good day, shaped more like a bowling ball than a ballerina. He was one of the most dominant power forwards ever. Chuck earned his nickname, the round mound of rebound, snacking boards like a hungry man at a buffet, and his trash-talking and words with the media made him almost as famous as his play on the court. Barkley was the kind of player who made you question physics every time he went coast to coast and finished through 3 defenders. How could someone with his build dominate a league full of graceful giants? Barkley was an 11-time All-Star, but to appreciate how good he truly was, consider this. Barkley was the best player on the 1992 Dream Team, widely considered the best basketball team ever assembled, and the following season won the 1993 League MVP over a reigning back-to-back champion Michael Jeffrey Jordan. That's right, kids, he's not just the loudmouth analyst you hear today. Barkley had all the game. Barkley started in Philly and was individually brilliant, but a title wasn't something he had ever gotten close to until he was traded to Phoenix. The 1992-93 Suns team was absolutely stacked. Barkley was the MVP, the Suns were the number 1 seed, and Chuck was on a mission. They steamrolled through the playoffs and made it to the finals, but guess who was waiting for them? Yep, him again. Michael Jordan doing Michael Jordan things. Barkley gave it everything, averaging 27 points and 13 rebounds in the series. But the Bulls won in 6. After that, Chuck tried teaming up with Hakeem and Clyde in Houston, hoping to ride the post-Jordan window. But the Rockets were aging, injuries piled up, and the window slammed shut fast. Barkley retired without a ring, but with a legacy that's still larger than life. He dominated the game on the court and now dominates the mic off it. But when it comes to the championship table, Charles is still guaranteed to be left out. Anyone who saw him play knows Barkley was all power and attitude. Power is something that Barkley shares in common with the number 1 player on our list, a player who scored more points than Wilt, Michael, and Kobe, and the only time he failed to deliver was in the finals. Number 1, Karl Malone.
You better get going. Here's Karl Malone running one over the buzzer, and he makes it. Karl Malone right down the middle, about a 16-footer.
If scoring were the only thing that mattered, Karl Malone would have more rings than Thanos. The man dropped over 36,000 points, won 2 MVPs, and played 19 seasons of pure pain for opposing big men. He was a walking double-double, a freight train in transition, and the king of the pick and roll alongside John Stockton. But for all his dominance, Malone's career has a giant ring-shaped hole in it. Drafted by the Jazz in 1985, he helped turn Utah into a perennial playoff force. From the late 80s through the 90s, the Stockton to Malone combo was clockwork, and the mailman always delivered, except in June. His 2 best shots at a title were the 1997 and 1998 NBA Finals. Both times, Malone's Jazz ran into you-know-who, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. In '97, Malone even won the MVP, but Jordan reminded everyone who the real king was. Then, in '98, Utah had home court advantage, but then Game 6 happened. MJ stole the ball from Malone, hit the most iconic shot over Brian Russell, and walked off the GOAT, while Malone walked off empty-handed again. Malone tried one last run in 2004, joining the Lakers super team with Kobe, Shaq, and Gary Payton. However, injuries hit at the worst time. The chemistry combusted, and Detroit crushed their Hollywood ending. Karl Malone is one of the greatest power forwards ever, and statistically one of the best players to do it. Malone, like many, is a victim of playing in the Jordan era, and it's often easily forgotten how great Malone truly was. And there you have it. 10 NBA legends, 0 rings, but infinite respect. They may not have raised a trophy, but they raised the level of the game. And in the hearts of fans, they are champions even without the rings. Now we want to hear from you. Who's the greatest player never to win a ring? Did we miss anyone? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out this next video from our Top 10 series. Drop your thoughts in the comments. As always, we want to hear them.